Attention, all you fishes in the sea. Welcome to the Fisch Bowl with Sam Fish.
What's up, all my fishes in the sea? Thanks for tuning in for being a subscriber. I'm your host, Sam Fish, and today's guest is the infamous Deron McBee, aka Malibu from American Gladiators. Also known for his work, most notably in Mortal Kombat 2 Annihilation, just in time to check out before the release of Mortal Kombat 2. He's also known for his work in Batman Forever and Batman Returns. Tune in and check it out. Deron McBee on the Fisch Bowl. Welcome.
How's it going, my friend?
Finally got it together. Great. We finally did it. Thank you for taking the time to swim in the Fisch Bowl with me.
Yeah, I was ready to dip for a while and finally got my act together so I could make it on with you, man. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Well, we're both diving in head first. Well, first, let me just say I've literally been a fan of yours since I was a kid. I grew up watching American Gladiators. Of course, Mortal Kombat Annihilation is big on the list of things to talk about among some other TV stuff and film stuff. But my first question for you is actually what got you interested in film, and then like a segue, what kind of led to American Gladiators and stuff like that?
That's a good question. I don't get a lot of that asked of me, by the way. It's a good question. Actually, I don't share this a lot, but I used to be an LA County deputy sheriff. And got injured on the job and made some stupid decisions while I was injured. And during that time, I was recovering, and I kind of just, like I said, made a couple stupid decisions. I walked away from the department, which I, sometimes regret to this day because our police officers and sheriffs and firemen, they do such an amazing job, and there's so much pressure on them and what they do. So I look back with bittersweet thoughts about it. Obviously, my career kind of took off in the other direction, but when I left, I wasn't really happy with the person I was becoming, to be honest with you. I was turning into kind of a jaded person and just didn't like me. And I was always the kind of guy who wants to go out and help people. And I went into the department thinking I was going to help all these people and I was going to be this force for good. And I realized it's a dark world. And those guys have one of the toughest jobs in the world out there. And so at any rate, I also was an athlete, kind of a professional athlete before. I played a lot of racquetball, and I'd gotten really good at racquetball. And I love performing for the crowd. That was one of the highlights of my life, is seeing people smile when I was playing the game. And so I just decided I want to be an actor. And so it was just that kind of a snap decision. I started modeling first, and I enjoyed modeling, but it wasn't for me. I like moving and being a lot more physical. So I decided to throw my hat into the acting and stunt career.
Awesome. Well, it's so cool because you were kind of at like the dawn of where the muscle men stunt guys kind of really started to shine, and pave the way to kind of like become that like character actor kind of cult actor status. And now you have a whole kind of genre and almost like roles built and written for people like yourself that are in like the stunt, more like the stunt, muscle man category, genre, whatever. And it's really cool to see that you were one of the, I guess, like the pioneers for what is like a big, entertainment thing now. I mean, movies like Fast and Furious seek out like people like that. I think what's his name? Tate Fletcher is a big one now. I started seeing him pop up and started immediately follow him with that recognizable beard. And now like he has that whole role that was written for him on The Boys, so it's like very cool to see roles are, and the evolution of film TV is like being written for, the incredible men, the Incredible Hulk analogy, so what was American Gladiators like, and Any stories, experiences like that was one of the highlights of I would, watch when I was a kid. So I'm very kind of interested and excited to hear about that.
Sure. The way it happened, I mean, it really happened kind of by the grace of God. I was sitting on a life cycle one day, just pedaling away, working out like I normally do. And I just started trying getting into the business. My first acting job ever was a show called Married with Children. That was my first job I ever did. And I had a blast on that show. And the guy next to me was reading a trade magazine called Variety, or maybe it was Backstage. But he says, "Hey, Darren, they got this new show that they're coming out with, and they're looking for athletic guys. They're looking for a guy that's kind of like a surfer type. It looks like you fit the bill." And I go, "What's the name of the show?" And he goes, "Well, it's a show called American Gladiators." And I go, "Okay, what's the deal?" So he shows me the trade paper, and it says tryouts at such and such a park tomorrow. And so, of course, I went down there. My hair was already long at the time, and I went in there and I nailed. They had an obstacle course there, and they had how many sit-ups you can do in a minute, and I did like 83 or something. It was crazy, and I just had a really really good physical audition, and so they loved the look because of the blonde hair and everything, and so they asked me to do a in-person interview, and so I'm walking in this room and there's like, a director, producer, and so and so and so and so. And they're all sitting around me looking at me. And there's a table with, a bunch of junk on it, like, coffee mug and scripts and all. It was a big, messy table. And they just said in a chair, they goes, "Why don't you sit down there and just tell us a little about yourself? Your character's name is Domino," because that was the original name. And so I looked at him and go, "Domino, dude, that's a pizza delivery guy. My name's Malibu." And I cleared the table off and I jumped up there and I crossed my legs and I sat on the table and go, "I'm Malibu, bro. What's up?" And they fell out laughing. They just all started cracking up. And so that's how the name Malibu came to be, because I was going to be Domino otherwise. And so that's how I got the name. And anyway, so they wanted guys to be real physical, obviously, and I had the physical look, and the show was obviously full combat. I mean, every guy that was out there, we were like battling. We all got injured off and on over the time we were on the show, and all the guys were like ex-pro ball players. Mike Horton played football. He was Gemini. Nitro was a great athlete. Jim Starr played laser. Another great athlete. Pro level guys. To me, I'm looking at like, okay, my character's Malibu. I'm laid back. I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna have fun. If I get beat, who cares? If I win, who cares? Malibu's just like a rockin' dude who just having a party all the time. And I think that resonated with people. All of a sudden, they just like, "Oh, this guy doesn't care one way or the other. He's out for the brews and the babes, and that's it." And so it just really hit, and people just really really loved the character. And I'm sure if you have seen any of the show, you probably watched the episode where on the human cannibal, I got kicked off by this one guy. And my name is Brian Hudson. And for the people that don't know, human cannibal, as a gladiator, it was one of the beginning games. We would stand on this like disc. It was a 3-foot round disc. We'd have a football blocking pad, and across from us, about 25 feet away, we're 15 feet off the ground. The gladiators are, and they are 25 feet up in the air, and they swing down on a rope like Tarzan, and their job is to kick us off. So literally, I mean, it was such a bad game for the gladiators, because if they go by you and a stiff breeze hits you, you're going to fly off that pad. I mean, the balance is terrible. So I'm standing up there, and Brian came down and he cocked his legs just perfectly. And when he kicked me, I literally lifted up off the pad and flew back and hit the pad. And what happened was my left knee came over and hit me in the head with such force that I gave myself a massive concussion. And then I split my head open. I had to go to the hospital. And a lot of people don't realize that, but there was a day that I wasn't on the show, and a kid named, I think his name was Rich. He came in, his name was Bronco. He came in and filled in for a day. Really nice guy. Anyways, I was in the doctor's office, and orthopedic surgeon just finished stitching me up. And the doctor came up, emergency doctor, said, "Listen, you can't go back to work. You've got a concussion. And if you get hit again, even moderately hard," he said, "you could be in a wheelchair or dead, because your brain's swelling." And I'm like pleading with this guy. I go, Doc, look, I got to go back. This is my life. I'm never get a chance like this again. He said no. I asked him again. He said no. And I said, look, how many years do you go to medical school? Oh, well, 8 years and this and that. I said, how would you like it if you did your first surgery and someone came up to you and says, you can't ever do a surgery again? I said, how would you feel?
Right.
And he said, I'd be pretty bummed. I said, well, that's what you're doing to me. You're clipping my wings. I trained for this my whole life. I've been an athlete. I've been waiting for this moment. I said, don't take it from me, please. So he goes, okay, you're an idiot, Deron, but I'll sign you off. And so he signed me off, and I went back there and and I competed. I had a great time competing. I was scared out of my mind because I kept hearing this word in the back of my head: "You get hit again, you're done."
Hmm.
But I just had a blast, and it was really really fun. So I made some good friends there, and had one of the best times of my life. Obviously, it was something that kind of changed my life because American Gladiators ended up being this massive iconic hit in the '90s because there was just nothing like it. And if you know, Sam, that was like when reality TV just kind of
Right.
started, right? So
Exactly.
we kind of kicked it off.
Exactly. And I mean, I was even gonna, I guess one of my follow-up questions to the American Gladiators thing is like, I mean, there's obviously some very similar analogies with wrestling and even, martial arts and stuff like
Mhm.
that. Like
Right,
everything that goes into essentially what, an American Gladiator is, and
right, right.
going back to the Roman sense of gladiators,
Yeah,
they had to be in top physical form, hand-to-hand combat. I
right.
mean, what are your thoughts on like the comparisons and those industries on their own, not just industries, but practices, like stuff like that? And did any of that like correlate with developing Malibu and the personality and the persona and so on and so forth kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, the one thing about our show that was unique is that it, unlike wrestling, ours was 100% legit. Now, I'm not saying wrestling isn't legit. I did a couple matches of pro wrestling. Those guys get hurt so bad all the time. They're some of the best athletes, bar none, in the world. Incredible athletes. But, some of the moves obviously are, you have to be choreographed because they could be killing each other out there,
Right,
literally.
right.
So, but I mean, a lot of the moves, boy, I tell you what, if you've been body slammed before, it's crazy, man. I mean, I talked to one of these guys. He's an old time famous wrestler named Terry Funk, and he's super famous back in the day. And he said, "Listen, Deron," he goes, "I got body slammed so hard one time, I literally pooped my pants." So I said, "I believe you, bro." I said, "Hopefully it never happens to me." And I'm hoping you didn't wear white shorts that day. But he laughed. And so, I mean, a lot of that's real, and our show was real. Like I said, I got a concussion, and through the
Mhm.
rest of the season, I broke a couple ribs, I broke a finger. I know a lot of the other athletes, gladiators, were injured as well. So we were going out there against these contenders, and a lot of times the people would say, "Well, hey, you gladiators, you're way bigger and this and that." The truth of the matter was, these contenders that came on, most of them were great college athletes. Some of them had played pro ball before, but they were just smaller. And so these guys were smaller, but they were faster. They were pound for pound stronger than a lot of us. And to be honest with you, when they got out in front of camera and they knew their hometown was rooting for them, they were out for blood, man. They wanted to crush the gladiators. And so we were going against these guys, and it was like, okay, man, this is no joke. These guys are serious. And the thing about it was that people didn't realize is that we would film anywhere from 4 to 5 shows a day, complete shows. So
Mhm.
that meant 5 games of Powerball in one day, where every time we faced a new Powerball game, it'd be new contenders. So we as gladiators were going up against contenders that were fresh 5 different times. So by the end of the day, we're just beat up. I mean, just
Right,
totally beat.
right.
So
That's essentially how they film like game shows. You know,
exactly.
only the game show contestants don't have to, you know, they basically just stand there. It's
Right,
nothing is physically demanding about that. So
right.
now that I just kind of heard that and found that out, like that is like in extreme, like you and the rest of the American Gladiators have to be in such like fit physical condition, not just, with weights, but
Right.
aerobic,
Right.
like everything to
Right.
keep going for that amount of time and just, you know, one opponent after the
That's a
other
good
kind of.
point. Can I ask you? And I just want to add one thing because you made a really good point there. The guys that were just strict bodybuilders, like there's some guys that come in, they look phenomenal, but they were just, bodybuilders and they weren't agile and they weren't able to move really fast or have strong cardio. So they would lose in events like so quickly
Hmm.
because their muscles weren't prepared. You needed muscles that were used to, running and getting hit and having the physicality of not just weight training, but, boxing or martial arts or football or whatever it may be. In my case, it was racquetball and martial arts. So we were also super coordinated athletes going into that. So you're absolutely right. To your point, it takes more than just a good looking bodybuilder guy. It takes a lot of things to make up a gladiator for sure.
Absolutely. And even going back again to ancient Roman times, like, those guys would have to be, in the again, the top physical shape in every area because, they were literally fighting for their lives,
Yeah.
which ups the stakes, pretty much, to the top because your life is on the line. And that almost brings up like another thing of like the whole gladiator persona and, like the superstar, but also like the warrior,
Right.
which is like a whole interesting kind of concept in itself, which you could say help, chip away the hero archetype in film and, you know, even probably could have been some of what paved the way for the original, muscle guy, Schwarzenegger and Stallone, usher in like that era of, like a film
Yeah.
icons. And if you look at like film today, like everybody has to be ripped. If you're going to
Yeah.
be a leading man, especially in, action, whatever,
Yeah.
like everybody has to be ripped or in some, excellent physical shape.
For
And
sure.
it's almost like if you're not, then there's only like there's the fit, man, and then there's the overweight man. And,
Right.
there's only been like a few overweight men that can carry their own and
Mhm.
not be laughed at in like the comical sense,
Right. Right.
and I always thought that was like an interesting, like I guess whatever Hollywood is, prone to casting for specific type roles. But I mean,
Mhm.
like John Goodman, when he, was younger, was one of the only, overweight actors that wasn't a comedian that, could hold his own and
Right.
legitimately act. The late Philip Seymour Hoffman, I thought was another excellent one that was
Um,
on the heavier side, but was an ex
right.
phenomenal actor. I mean, Chris Farley, while he did some earlier roles like Tommy Boy and Black Sheep, where I thought it was more like laugh at him because he's, overweight. But,
Right.
once he branched away from, getting like cast, with David Spade all the time. Not that, they weren't an excellent team like Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi, but if you look at, his standalone stuff and also his character roles where he's like not the main person in the movie. I thought he was always funny and had the capability to, if he would have lived, to do much more. So
Yeah.
I just think it's a very interesting, how Hollywood body image and everything, but at the same time, you guys kind of like, and you yourself ushered in like that the stunt, muscle man era. So
Yeah.
I think it's very cool, and it also, goes to show that, you know, working out and,
Yeah.
staying fit and everything it pays off, and you know, you can do a lot of stuff with it among a lot more than just being healthy.
Sure.
But I believe we were starting to talk about before we did the interview that American Gladiators was coming back, uh,
Yes.
like a
Yeah.
reboot.
Yeah, they're doing a reboot. Johnny Ferraro, who is the creator of it, and a friend of mine, super cool guy. He's gone. He's been working his tail off since the original Gladiators went off, and now he's brought back the show. And from what he's telling me, it's going to be spectacular. I talked to one of the new Gladiators. I forgot his name, but I think his name was Steele or something. But it's just funny because he's like, "Hey, Malibu, man, I had to call you because you were like my favorite." And I said, how old are you? He goes, man, I was 5 back then. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm old. I'm a dinosaur. You're right. But I mean, he was really cool. And so Johnny said it's going to be a lot of fun, and these guys are super athletes, which I'm sure they are. And to your point earlier, Sam, which is really interesting, is that you're right. I would go on auditions all the time, obviously, when I was an actor. And you didn't see very many guys in great shape back in the 90s that worked out. It just wasn't a big deal. Even WWE, they had some guys that were in good shape, but very few of the guys are like ripped. And now, like you said, you can't get an audition as a young person unless you're in shape. You just can't. And so you're to the point that you made. You're absolutely right with this whole genre of superhero movies that's coming out and all that. You can't be a one-dimensional actor anymore. You got to be fit. You got to be in shape, and you got to have the right look. So I'm thankful to be on the kind of the, like you said, the beginning of how things have changed and the country's changed and all that. So it's really neat to be a part of all of this stuff.
It's very, very, very cool. And also, I mean, it's like because of that point that you could say that it's probably what led to being a big contributor to getting you cast as now in Mortal Kombat Annihilation, which, I definitely want to talk about because I grew up playing those games. And
Mm,
my friend, he lived down the street from me as a kid. He had two older sisters, so he had like all the video game systems, like where I was like, trying to say to my parents, I need to get these. They're like, why? What is it? But anyways, it would be like a regiment after school. We would go over to his house, play Mortal Kombat. I remember exactly the theater that's no longer there, where I
mhm.
saw the first one, and with my dad and one of his friends. And I remember seeing Annihilation at a different movie theater with my dad as a
Right.
kid. He's really responsible for like getting me into pretty much everything I'm into, which is just like grown and surpassed anything he ever could have imagined. The Mortal Kombat games and movies and even the animated stuff is like such a huge part of my childhood that like to see the reboot, I'm not even going to say it's a remake, that they did, that came out a few years ago, and the next installment that's supposed to come out, I guess this year sometime.
Yeah,
uh,
looks good, man. Looks really good.
I'm very excited, and I also know like a lot of people, especially the younger generation, that has grown up in the age of like CG and effects and everything. It doesn't appreciate what us 80s and 90s people had to work with
Yeah,
before
right.
the kinks were worked out with CG stuff. So I know Annihilation gets a little bit of a bad rep with some of the CG that was used, but
Yeah,
I also know that from reading up on it that there was a lot they wanted to do with the script, but
I'll tell you about that. Yeah,
right, but
yeah.
with technology restrictions and
Mhm.
budgetary stuff, a lot of it had to get cut and rewritten. And
Right, right,
um, it's only like now, almost 30 some years later, that we're at a point technology wise where they can do a lot of stuff that they initially wanted to do with the original first two installments. And
right. Let me
I
tell you
have
something. You get a minute, I want to tell you something about that because you made a really good point. So go ahead.
the only thing I was going to say before we get into it is that I have pros and cons with the new one versus the originals, or the original, I should say. I haven't, we have to wait and see with the sequel. which looks phenomenal just off the bat.
Right.
But with that being said, let's get into Annihilation.
Sure. Everything you said was spot on. What I found that was fascinating, just to kind of retrack, well, just to talk about the whole auditioning process for me. To me, I'm almost more proud of that, the fact that I was on that, than anything I've done, because I had to go through 5 different auditions to book that role. Because originally they were looking for somebody like really massive to play Motaro, and what got it for me is just my acting abilities just outshine the other guys basically, and my martial arts. You got a lot of guys who were big guys that couldn't move, they just couldn't do the fights correctly, or just couldn't handle the dialogue at all. And so 5 different times I had to audition for it. And then when I finally booked it, man, I got to tell you, it was like a dream for me, because I remember 2 years prior to that, I would be training on the life cycle, listening to Mortal Kombat, going, man, I would love to be in a Mortal Kombat movie. That'd be so cool. And the next thing you know, man, I end up getting to be Motaro. And when I met this guy, we went to Amsterdam to prepare for the film. And the guy he was an Israeli guy, and he was doing motion cap photography, basically called motion capture photography. And basically what that is, you're a live actor, and you have a 10-foot square that you can do your acting in. And as you're doing the fight scene, everything gets put into the computer, and the computer pixelates everything. You've got these iridescent balls on your knee, on your shoulder,
Mhm.
everywhere. And so it pixelates that and turns it into kind of a moving stick man, if you will. And from the stick man, they built the character over that, inlaid the character with the computer generated graphics. But believe it or not, back at that time, what we did was state of the art. Like, my character was on screen. It was $1 million a minute for my character to be on screen back then, because it was so state of the art. And I remember I was talking to the guy, I wish I could remember his name, but he said, Deron, 20, 30 years from now, they're going to be able to be so good with CGI that you can do a picture of a guy's face or his body, and you're going to put it in a computer, and it's going to be like you don't even recognize the difference between the real guy and the computer generated guy. Like, in other words, he goes, we could bring back, say, Errol Flynn from back in the 40s. He was a swashbuckling actor, or Humphrey
Mhm.
Bogart. And we could put him in a movie with Brad Pitt today, and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. 30 years from now. And like, there's just no way. Come on, you got to be kidding me. He goes, you watch, it's coming. And I look down, it's like they can do it. You
Yeah.
can do with a computer, like not expensive computer software, you can do a deep fake where you could make, our president, jumping naked into a swimming pool,
Right,
and you
right,
won't even, you know what I'm saying? And
right.
so that's how far we've come along since back then. But to me, it's just amazing to see that evolution, to be a part of it. And also, the whole genre to me was just a lot of fun. I had great fun with the cast and crew, and one of the best experiences of my life. I get to travel and meet some great people, and it's been just a blast. So, and you're right, as far as the script goes, the script was written and I'd read it. It was phenomenal. They had to cut like 13 or more pages out of it. And the fight with me and Jax was supposed to be insane. My tail was supposed to knock these Roman pillars down, and it was really super cool. And a lot of dialogue that would have made that movie make more sense was cut out. So that unfortunately hurt the movie. I mean, we came out #1 in the box office, but then it fell off really quick. And the only other thing I thought about it that I didn't care for was there was just too many flips in the movie. It's like every other fight guy had to do a
Yeah,
flip, and
yeah.
you're utilizing that way too much, and I think it hurt the choreography a little bit. But other than that, to me, it was one of the best experiences of my life. I really had a great time doing it.
Well, one I have to say, I really liked Brian Thompson as Shao Kahn.
Yes.
Like I mean, going back to the '80s with his first kind of role opposite Schwarzenegger, who kills him in
Yeah.
Terminator,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then him getting, because if you look at him in Terminator, then you see him go up against Stallone and Cobra. He
Yeah.
goes from being kind of like a little like fit, scrawny to being like totally ripped. And
Yeah,
that's been his like physique ever since. And then another 90s show I gotta mention because it's one of his key roles, The X-Files. I grew up on The X-Files. The X-Files is
yeah,
one of the best TV series ever made.
great.
And, I wish Hollywood would just like look back at that show, and there is so many source material
Yeah,
ideas that you could make into a feature-length film
sure.
that has no relation to the X-Files, just solely inspired by the
Yep,
X-Files.
yep, yep.
I mean,
Totally
it's
agree.
like it's a bottomless pit of source material ideas to work
Right,
with, and
right.
then see him in there as that alien bounty hunter,
Yep,
character, and
yeah.
all the other roles that he's done over the years. He just has that like that he's one of those just guys that just has a signature look that is meant to be a villain. You
One,
know.
one thing about Brian, great guy. I did the Conan show at Universal Studios for years, and Brian
Hmm.
was played one of the characters there as well. Super cool guy. We had the best time in Thailand together. I can't say enough about the guy. He's a super cool guy, fun. He's just got this aura about him. I mean, you talk about somebody who's cool, but he's just got this aura, larger than life aura about him. And he's got a genetic condition where from his body, his lower body up, he can't keep the fat in his body. So if you see his cheeks, no, his cheeks are always sucked in, and his face is
Hmm.
like it's like he
Right.
can't keep the fat in his face, and that's why he's ripped to shreds all the time. Of course, he works out like a fiend, but when I was sitting on set with him, going, bro, how do you do that? I mean, you got this freakiest skin. It's like paper thin and super muscular, and a great actor. I mean, nobody could have done a better job at that than Brian. There's no way. He was awesome in that.
I agree with that, and same goes for Kerry. Oh, I can't pronounce his
The
last name.
Gala, right?
Yes, yes, who
Yeah.
played the original Shang Tsung, which I will also say as a pro and con with the original Mortal Kombat to the reboot they did. Now there that's where I'll get into here.
Mhm.
There were some things I really, really liked about the reboot, and I thought it was in terms of like I thought a major issue all throughout like the 2000s and 2010s with video game adaptation movies is that they made the movie like a video game
Mhm.
instead of making a movie based off a video game filmed like a movie, if that makes any sense.
Totally.
Like it's the like the Hitman movies, you had such potential to like make a awesome like thriller or action movie type of film, but instead they totally dropped the ball and they made it like just campy and goofy, like like as if the film was a video game. Where like movies in the 90s with video games, I thought, they started off right. They didn't try to make the game into a movie. They tried to make the movie its own thing based on the video game material.
Exactly.
Now, Mortal Kombat, the reboot, that the first one they did, one of the major issues that I always had with the originals is that they were PG-13 and
Mm.
not R, but they still encompass like some unique qualities that I think just hasn't been recaptured or at least shown to us to date because I know, they're planning to do like one or two more after this next one that's supposed to come
Mhm.
out. So then it seems like the way the first one was built up, they're like planning on introducing a lot of stuff with the sequels. So it still remains to be seen, and I can't say so much until I see the
Right.
finished
Exactly.
final product. But with the first one, the biggest thing that I loved about it was one, the way the movie opened with the fight with Scorpion and Sub-Zero. how that was like more truer to the games. That whole fight scene, the actors that played both Sub-Zero and Scorpion, phenomenal
Mhm.
martial artists.
Yeah. Amazing.
Uh, the one who played Sub-Zero, I loved him in the Cinemax show Warrior, which talk about, modern, TV cinema and mixing martial arts being based on Bruce Lee and all that.
Yeah.
That show was phenomenal. He plays such a good villain.
Mhm.
And like they nailed Scorpion and Sub-Zero in the reboot better
Agreed.
than the originals. But Goro, at least from what I've seen with the first one, they totally dropped the ball with him. The original, he had more screen time and more lines than he had in the reboot. I did think Kano in the reboot was much better and developed and almost like stole the show in terms of like dialogue and, character
Mhm.
development. A lot of the characters I think were just better developed, but again, Brian Thompson as Shang Tsung, Carrie, as Shang Tsung,
Yeah.
just those two actors with their looks
Yeah.
and personas that they brought to the screen with Mortal Kombat and Mortal Kombat Annihilation. Just they can't recapture that. I don't care
No.
who they cast. It's
No.
like if they try. It's like Disney trying to reboot Blade.
Right.
You can't do it
Right.
without Wesley Snipes.
It
You
ain't
know,
gonna happen. Man. Ain't gonna happen. No, that
right,
was amazing. Right.
right, right. Those were just my overall kind of thoughts on the first reboot compared to the original Mortal Kombat movies. And I'm still really excited to see where they're going to go with the second one.
Me
It
too.
looks like they based a lot of, at least the reboots, off of the animated movies, which I'm not sure if you've seen or not. But
No, I haven't. I've seen clips of them. I haven't seen the movies. No, but I've seen parts of them, so I know what you're talking about. Basically.
yeah, yeah, the animated ones are definitely worth watching
Okay.
because the one there are, so it's like
Cool. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
well, they're actually more bloodier, gorier than the live action movies with what they can do with animation. But you want to talk about Scorpion being like the really well developed character. I mean,
Mhm.
I may not be 100% on this, but I think the writer for the animated movies is also the writer behind the live action reboots, which would make sense with how they're like kind of building up. They're not the first movie, they didn't do anything with the tournament.
Right.
That's being introduced in the next one.
Right.
And also some of the shots where they showed in the trailer where Johnny Cage is fighting, I forget which character, but he was in Annihilation in the scene with where Shiva gets killed. Um,
Hmm.
the guy with like the monster guy with like the knives and stuff. I forget the
Yeah.
character,
Yeah. 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 I
but
forgot his name, Blanca or something, or
yeah,
so.
yeah,
I can't.
Brock, I think is what it is.
Yeah.
But either way, I'm definitely stoked. I'm excited to see what they're gonna do with it.
Yeah.
And I thought the casting of Johnny Cage with Carl Urban was great.
Yeah.
But again, I don't think anybody can replace Robin. What's it, his last, how to pronounce his last name? Shai.
Promise you.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
Shu, yeah, but as Liu Kang. I'm sorry. He was Liu Kang.
You really
Um,
did a good
uh,
job too. You're right.
so
Yeah.
there's, I mean, obviously everybody ages.
Right.
We can't stay young forever. And there will always be with material like this reiterations as long as
Sure.
Hollywood and franchises exist. Mm,
Right.
But I think there's something to be said about the first to do it. It's
Hmm.
like it's the reason I say Sean Connery is the best
Double O
double oh
seven.
007
Yeah.
because he
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
the first. Same
He's the
thing
first.
with Michael Keaton as
Oh,
Batman.
man,
Um,
that was amazing. I've worked in two Batman movies. I've done stunts in the Latin in two Batman movies, and Michael Keaton just—I'm sorry, his face. I didn't buy it. I didn't want to buy it in the beginning. I thought, you got to be kidding me. I seen his comedy stuff. But when
Right.
he came out as Batman, I was sold 150%, man. It was awesome.
Yeah, and that's actually a good segue because I wanted to talk to you about the stunt work you did on as like the thug characters. I believe one was for Batman Forever and Batman and Robin.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Yeah, I got a funny story about Batman and Robin, then I'll go back to Batman Forever. But I was in a scene where Poison Ivy she was walking up this kind of a stairway up to the top of this precipice at this kind of 12-foot high precipice, and she was in a gorilla suit, and she strips out of this gorilla suit and she falls backwards. And I was just one of the stuntmen that caught her. It wasn't
oh
her
wow.
stunt, obviously, but and I forgot the stunt girl I actually worked with on Mortal Kombat. She uh, was a stunt girl for I can't remember. I'll think about it. But she was in that one also. But so she did the fall, it was 12-foot fall. We caught her, and so all of us, I guess it was 4 or 5 of us, were painted gold from head to toe, and we were wearing these black wigs that had this like little sprout coming up the top. It looked like something out of the Flintstones, and a couple of us were sitting in a room waiting to do our scene, and here comes Arnold Schwarzenegger with his entourage, and of course he's leading. He's smoking a cigar, Arnold, and he's jumping through, and of course when Arnold goes anywhere, you can feel the atmosphere change. It's really wild, man. He's got a presence about him. And he walks up and he's looking down at me. I'm gold head to toe, this stupid Bam Bam wig on my head. He goes, "You look like a stupid transsexual." He walks off. Like, well, thanks, Arnold. I think he meant transvestite. I don't know, but we all started laughing so hard. I go, "Why'd you have to look at me? Well, we got 5 other guys around me." But it was funny, man. He's a funny guy, man. He had great sense of humor. And the guy who played Bane, Jeep, neat guy, he passed away, but legitimate 25-inch arms. That guy's one of the biggest dudes I've ever seen.
Wow.
Super nice guy, but his arms were just, I mean, give you an example. Mine's are, the biggest they ever were 20 inches. And he's got a guy that got 5 inches bigger arms than me. It's just massive guy. But yeah, so that was my Arnold thing. When I did Batman Forever, I had a ball on that too. The neatest part was, if you watch the beginning, I get a solo shot on this thing. It's like, it was amazing, like the grace of God or something. In the beginning, Two-Face is robbing a bank, right? And
Right.
these goons find out Batman is coming up a staircase, or I mean, the elevator. And so there's, 10 of us goons there. And so they're like blasting when he comes through the elevator. So Batman comes through, he beats up all the guys. At the very end, the last guy comes jumping into the scene and got 2 big long spikes coming out of his gloves. That's me. And so I'm crossing these gloves, doing like this kind of Wolverine thing, and I charge at him like a bull going at a matador. He just does, steps out of the way and grabs me by the collar at the last second and throws me into this other stunt guy. So I was like super proud of that scene, man, because it was just me doing a one-on-one with Val Kilmer, who was a really interesting guy. We had a good time with him. Talk about amazing actor. Wow. Anyways, yeah, so that was fun. And then I had one scene where that wasn't a scene, it was off on outside of the set. And I literally was walking faced up to Tommy Lee Jones, who isn't a very nice man, to be honest with you. But I was walking towards him. My grandma is a huge fan of his, like massive fan of Tommy Lee Jones. Now, mind you, I've been working next to this guy, literally next to him, for 3 weeks.
Right.
So he knows who I am. He knows who I am without a doubt. And so I literally run straight into him. He's walking with somebody, talking to him. And I said, hey, Mr. Jones, I'm sorry to bother you, but my grandma's a super cool, big, huge fan of yours. Is there any way I could get a picture with an autograph? And Tommy Lee Jones, he looks at me right in the eyes. Then he looks down, he looks up, and he goes, and he walks right past me. And I'm going, what a wiener. I mean, it's like, dude.
Right.
And not only did you just blow me off, you went out of your way to let me know you blew me off, I'm like,
Right.
what a wait. And then I was around the same day, maybe a day later, 5 of us stunt guys are sitting around just talking about whatever we're talking about. And across the way, this little guy comes out of a soundstage next door, and he's wearing camo fatigues, tiny, and he's carrying a big gulp, and a big gulp makes him look small. And he
Right.
walks up and he goes, "Hey guys, what are you doing?" And it's Dustin Hoffman. And so Dustin Hoffman just comes over to just shoot the stuff with us. And I'm thinking, man, what a difference. He's a super cool guy. He just wants to talk
Right.
with us about what's going on. And here's Tommy Lee Jones out of his way to give me the big, F you middle finger after I've been working with him. And somebody came to me later and said, don't even worry about it. The guy is super jealous of people that are muscular and tall. And he said, you're just intimidating him. And I said, well, the guy's one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. What does he care about
Right.
me? So, anyways, those are some of my stories and stuff. But I had a wonderful time both movies. I did get injured on Batman and Robin. And here's another story. My mom is a hairdresser, and so she happened to be one of the hairdressers on Batman and Robin. So it was
Oh,
really cool
cool.
to work. I got to work with my mom. So we're doing this one scene where Mr. Freeze throws a stuntman through this giant stained glass window, and we're down at the bottom. Excuse me. So when the stuntman hits the ground, there's this big pad, and we want to make sure that he hits the pad and not hits the concrete. So the guy goes through the window, and it's a real window. He's coming sideways. One of our guys had to bump him, so he hit the pad. And all of a sudden, I felt like someone slapped me right in the face. And I'm shaking my head, going, "What the heck was that?" Then all of a sudden, I feel this warm stuff running down my face. Well, a piece of the window, the wood
Oh,
window,
wow.
so broke off and hit me right square in the forehead, and like punched a hole the size of a pencil lead, not a pencil, maybe a pencil eraser, and blood just starts coming down. So forehead cuts are nasty. They bleed like
Hmm.
crazy because you're sweating. And anyways, I wasn't hurt. I was a little bit stunned, but call goes out. You hear him, stuntman injured. Get the paramedics. Blah blah blah. And so I'm sitting there and I'm fine. And all of a sudden, here comes my mom running, and she sees me, and she
Oh,
goes, "Oh
no.
God, Sonny, it's you!" And I go, "Don't call me Sonny in front of all these people, Mom." And so I said, "I'm fine, Mom. I'm totally fine." But of all people, I have to be, injured right in front of my mom, and it wasn't a big deal. But that's a day I'll never forget, man. And so it was kind of bittersweet there because I had a little scar there, but my mom was really super cool. We had a great time working on it together. So those are a couple of my memories from those two movies.
Awesome. Awesome. That's so cool. Those were like some of my top just favorite, childhood stuff growing up with. And actually to this day, I am a diehard Batman film because of
Um,
Keaton, because of Kilmer,
yeah,
because of as bad
yeah.
as George Clooney was, Schwarzenegger uh, makes you and Schwarzenegger make that movie watchable.
Oh, thank you, man. Yeah, it was.
Uh,
Clooney was a nice guy. He just was terrible for Batman. And you
right,
could tell he didn't want to be there. He was
right,
phoning it in. It's like, dude, why we even do the movie if you're going to be like that? You know what I mean?
exactly.
At least Val kicked butt. I thought Val did a great job.
I thought Val was great. I mean, I mean, you can definitely tell there's a big difference between the Keaton versus Tim
Oh
Burton
yeah,
versus the
yeah,
Schumacher.
yeah.
I mean, it's now, looking back as an adult, I basically, categorize them as like there's the two Tim Burton, Michael Keaton ones, and then
Right,
there's the two that came after.
right, right,
Um,
right, right. No, I agree totally. Totally agree. I
and
totally.
and Batman Forever, I really enjoyed it. And I was even going to comment on something when you were talking about the story with Tommy Lee Jones that I remember reading that and hearing like trivia stuff that Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones really did not get along on set. And from what I kind of heard more specifically is that Jones really was not impressed with Carrey's antics.
Matter of
With
fact,
how,
I don't mean to interrupt you, but he was
yeah, yeah,
having dinner. Did he tell you that? So he was having dinner at this place. Jim Carrey was, and Tommy Lee Jones was over there. And so Jim thought, hey, I'm going to go over and say hi. And so he goes over and Tommy Lee snubs him. And he goes, hey, what's the problem? He goes, I can't stand your buffoonery. It was like, you just had to cut him down,
Right,
and that's how
right,
grouchy that guy is, man.
right.
So
And
what a shame.
I mean, I guess the face kind of like, I mean, he looks kind of like a bulldog,
He
you
does.
know.
That's what I was going to
Uh,
say.
you
Totally.
know.
Yeah.
So I guess I don't I don't like to say judge a book by its cover, but I
In that
guess in
case,
that case,
yeah.
and don't get me wrong, I think he's a phenomenal actor.
Oh,
Uh,
great.
you know,
Great.
there's been, I mean, one of my favorite movies from like the 2000s ish was The Hunted, him and
Yeah.
Benicio del Toro.
Well, that
Uh,
was, yeah, it was a great movie. Great movie.
I think that movie really goes under the radar, even
Mhm.
though it gets played a lot on like the movie channels or
Yeah.
streaming or whatever. But that movie, in terms of military presence and showing one of my favorite genres of film, which is survival,
Yeah.
you know, showing what you can do and how quick and easily you can make, weapons,
Mhm.
to survive, and in that case, it was knives and, you know, Navy SEAL stuff and special ops and stuff like that.
Yeah. Right.
But it was the fight at the end between Del Toro and
Yeah.
Jones is brutal and one of the coolest choreographed hand-to-hand, combat sequences in film. Another one, I got to give it to the Coen brothers, No Country for Old Men.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh my gosh.
Excellent in that. And I'll
Wow.
even go back to the 90s, uh, s- probably what's considered Steven Seagal's best film, Under Siege, and also, what is it, A Fugitive and U.S. Marshals
Of
was
course.
great. I mean, he's has a huge, repertoire of film, but I guess, where Clint Eastwood has that kind of like intimidating, look, I've heard he's a
Right.
very nice guy.
Right.
Uh, and I've interviewed people that have worked with him and have said, the same thing, and actually not just a nice guy, but a stand-up guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I heard, in an
Right. Me
interview I
too.
did that, when he directs his movies, he waits till everyone eats first when they break for lunch and stuff before he eats, which really
Right.
shows a lot of
Right.
character,
Well, yeah, that's rare, but that's awesome.
that old school, mindset,
Hmm.
and when he goes, it'll be a sad day because, losing Gene Hackman last year,
Yeah.
um, was in like almost, I think the last kind of like actors of like that generation. We still got Duvall, Robert Duvall, Clint
Amazing.
Eastwood.
One of the
Um,
greatest. Clint Eastwood. Yeah.
yeah,
Two of the best. Yeah.
so big fans. Obviously I'm a fan of cinema in general, and Duvall is one of my favorite actors.
Blow
Um,
me away stuff he does. I watch him and I'm blown away. The stuff he pulls out from internally, you can't be doubled. Him and Christopher Walker. Wait, what's his name? Christopher Walken.
Walken, yeah,
Oh, there's another one. It blows me
yeah,
away the acting choices he makes. He's
yeah,
unbelievable. But
and
yeah,
also how Walken can go from like doing like one of the most like sinister villains to doing some of the most driest comedy,
hmm,
which I think is more of his natural personality is the dry humor.
right.
And again, going back to the 90s, if I ever have a bad day, all I got to do is put on YouTube the Fat Boy Slim music video. I forget what's the song. The name of the song is absent from my mind right now, but he dances in the music video, and they have him on wires, so like he's flying around and stuff.
That's funny.
It's
That's
really
funny.
really hysterical. But artist is Fatboy Slim, and it's the choices he makes and seeing some of the roles. One of my what I think is one of his most underrated roles, especially because he plays a really sinister villain. It's a movie called Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
he plays a paraplegic mob
Oh,
boss. and there's a lot of stars in that. William Forsythe, Andy Garcia, Christopher Lloyd,
Right.
so many people, but great little like more indie gangster film from the 90s. But another class, the late Treat Williams was in it, played
Yeah, yeah.
Joe Pesci, psychotic,
Yeah,
type
he's great at
character.
that.
But there's just so many movies, and I feel like while we still have great stuff coming out, it's gotten like less and less, and
Hmm.
the older days were I think were a little more you know full of more films, more like that are that are lasting.
Oh,
um
absolutely. They're
you
timeless,
know
right? Really, truly.
exactly. Like Terminator 2 still holds up to this day.
Oh, absolutely.
And all the Terminator sequels they've done since don't. Some are already dated, some just the budget choices they chose to make with certain stuff, having
Hmm.
some characters versus others. I feel like the closest that we got with Terminator was, and everybody hates this one, is the one where it's in the future, like after the bombs drop, was the one with Christian Bale and Sam
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Worthington.
I saw that one. I saw that
Uh,
one.
you
Yeah.
know, it's the only one that doesn't have Schwarzenegger in it. I think it's the only one that, like, I mean, if it were me and I was thinking, how do I continue the Terminator franchise without having to completely reboot it? Just shoot it in the future, during the war. I think that's what everybody really is like waiting and wants to see. And I know they've had video games about it, going back to like video games, Mortal Kombat, and all that.
Hmm.
So like the source material is there,
For
and
sure.
you just need like proper studio and budget to greenlight it. But I think we are almost at about time here.
Hmm.
So I am gonna cut the conversation here. But
Okay.
Darren, it has been a pleasure having you on the show. I still have like a lot of questions to ask.
Do
Um,
another one. Let's just do another one.
yeah,
There's tons of
yeah,
stuff we can talk about too. I got a lot to share with you. So yeah, let's just do another one.
that would be awesome. I think like
Sure.
we're at about an hour here, so I figure
Yeah,
that's like a
fine. I got this.
good like little cutoff point. But
Well, it's
to
perfect. It's
save.
Valentine's Day for me. I got to be with my wife, or she's gonna hang me out to dry. So it's perfect.
That's another thing I figured. So I was gonna let you swim out of that one easy.
Yeah, I better, or she's gonna drown me. One.
Right. Yeah. So you know, Darren, thank you so much for taking the
You bet.
time to swim in the fishbowl with me. It has
Thank you
been
so
a
much.
pleasure. This has been a
Yeah.
great conversation, a childhood, you know, interview dream come true. So
Thank you, buddy.
I have your number. I will
Yeah.
definitely be in touch,
True.
and I will let you know when it'll be up, and we will
Okay.
definitely do a round two, three, four,
Yeah,
five,
for sure.
whatever.
I'd love to. I'd love to. You're a great guy, Sam. Thank you.
So thank you so much. Hey there, all my fishes in the sea. Thanks for tuning into today's episode and for being a subscriber. Your continued listenership and support means the most and helps keep the show growing to deeper and deeper depths. I want to let all my guppies in the sea know the Fisch Bowl has now officially partnered with FastCustomShirts.com, where they're now selling custom Fisch Bowl t-shirts under their podcast and website section. Every t-shirt that's purchased helps and goes a long way to keep the show growing to deeper and deeper and higher depths. I also now have custom hats, beanies, handbags, pens, mouse pads, everything to make you look like the coolest looking fish in the sea, which you can DM me directly on Instagram at the Fishbowl88 or on Facebook at just the Fishbowl, or you can friend request me, Sam Fish, directly and get yours today. Your continued listenership and support again means the most. It's the most important fishes that flock together. We are a school of fish and we keep the unit going. Let's all keep swimming upstream.